My name is Justin Reithbaum, and I am talking about circular saws today on the safety topic. I'm going to start off by showing y'all a worm drive saw we had on our job that is no longer in use. It's been ran over. It's just not safe to use, but it'll provide as a good example to show why the violations towards OSHA. If you look at this is the guard right here. You always want to make sure there's a good spring in the guard, because it needs to always cover that blade. You also want to check the blade before any use and make sure there ain't no chunks missing out of it. Make sure it's good and tight, because these things will fly off. They'll fly off really easy too. It usually messes somebody up. If you look at this cord, you can't duct tape a cord back to it. Well, you can, but this is not OSHA approved. This is not acceptable. You have to fix this. This ground plug right here, it needs to be cleaned off and plugged all the way into the receptacle to power the saw. And another thing, which a table saw is pretty much considered a circular saw too. When you use a table saw, you have to pay really close attention to what you're doing, because table saws are unforgiving. There's a lot of guys walking around on this job site right now that have had bad incidents with table saws, from clothes getting tangled in, their fingers. So that's just a prime example of, you just got to use common sense around these saws, because if you mess up, usually it's going to end up a huge gash, or you're going to lose something. Serious injuries can result from the use of a portable or stationary power saw. The greatest hazard is that the operator risks contact with the turning blade. Accidents may occur if the operator is inexperienced, improperly trained, or if the blade is not properly guarded. That's a big deal with OSHA, is these blades being guarded. If you put a little piece of block in there and chalk the guard up, I know it's easier to cut that way. You ain't got to fight with the guard, but it's a major violation. Also too, you want to make sure when you're ripping plywood or cutting 2x4s or anything, when you get done cutting with it, make sure the guard comes back down before you set it down. A lot of guys slam it down like this and catches their pants leg or their shirt, or just goes right into their leg, and that'll mess you up pretty quick. You want to make sure when you're using a reciprocating saw, saber saw, scroll saw, jigsaw, all that stuff, you want to make sure there's a constant pressure control switch, and you need to check that switch. If it seems to be getting weak, or if the trigger needs to be fixed, you need to tag it out, and it don't need to be used till it's fixed, or you need to get a new one, because it's just not safe for the job. When using a handheld saw, you want to always direct the blade away from any people or an aisle, anywhere that people are walking. You want to make sure to cut away from, because you don't want to cut through a board and somebody be walking by and you cut them by accident, because it just wouldn't be very good for anybody. You always have to maintain sharp blades with these saws. If you don't use sharp blades, you use dull blades, or say you're using a wooden blade and it's all scuffed up, it's not going to cut the wood, it's just going to start throwing it out, and it hits you in the eye, which you should always have eye, face, and hearing protection on as well when you're using these saws. I know a lot of people don't, but you need to. You always want to make sure you use the proper blade for the materials you're going to be cutting with. You don't want to use a wooden blade for a cutting concrete, and vice versa. You don't want to use concrete to cut wood. Always avoid loose-fitting clothing and jewelry and long hair when using these tools, because you don't want to get it tangled up. And you need to use a GFCI protection with the electric corded powered circular saw. That means, you know, just make sure there's a ground plug on your cord. And that'll about sum it up. Just be careful, use common sense when you use these saws, because they'll mess you up. But take time and do what's right, you'll be just fine.